Thank you so much. I'm actually super honored and privileged to be actually moderating a very august panel, and also to be actually trying to come behind a class act of Shri Vijay Kumar. But we hope that his participation in the panel will add to the richness of the discussion. So I'll just make a few opening remarks. And so we are very also pleased as a foundation to have joined hands in the whole mission. We've been, as you know, supporting both the Bihar SRLM, but also providing some technical assistance and support to the National Rural Livelihood Mission. And we also engage as a foundation with the UPSRLM. So those, as you might know, for the Gates Foundation, UP and Bihar are focus states for a lot of our health interventions, in fact. And therefore, we also feel a deep engagement with the SRLMs is of prime importance. So again, as I said, I'm very, very privileged to be here and moderating this discussion. You made some amazing points for us on kind of the ethos of how NRLM evolved over the years. And those guiding principles echo very well with an organization like the Gates Foundation, where, of course, as you might have known, our coaches are very committed to the fact that every life should have equal value. And we are very committed also to ensuring that when we say that, we ensure that the gender equality piece is front and center of everything that we do. From many aspects, our work with the Rural Livelihoods Mission, working with the SAGs and communities, is core to the way that the foundation would like to operate. That is, that we understand, just as you said, that there is so much more to learn from communities and help them along as support institutions in helping them find the ways to lift themselves out of poverty. That is, the solutions lie with them, and we only have to provide the support structures. And the biggest thing that we can do is listen closely to the ground.
Madhu?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear you, but we're not able to see you very clearly. I think it's towards the ceiling.
Is this better?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay,
Continue.
thank you. I'm sorry. Yes. So to say that, you know, our missions are very, very aligned to, as I said, to the work that the SHGs do, the community organizations do. And we are very privileged also. We're also very privileged to work with these institutions that support the poor, as you have rightly faced it. And of course, all of our effort is in order for them, the poor themselves, to actually take on the leadership role. So all of that guiding principles that you have highlighted are ones that also drive the work of the Gates Foundation. So again, as I said, we're very privileged to be here and part of this panel discussion, and I am just a moderator. But I just want to say that we are very lucky in India, has shown us that we have developed, through the energies of people like yourselves, developed a very unique rural and urban community network where grassroots institutions like SHGs and their federations exist. This is unfortunately not true in many, many parts of the world where we work. And as these groups meet, using this human social infrastructure has actually played a very decisive role in the way that India has been able to respond to this amazing crisis that we are all kind of in the midst of, and could reach this network, both of the SHGs themselves, their households, within, you know, weeks, with strong messages, you know, ramping up production. We've all read the figures of how many masks, sanitizers, the production lines that they created. One of the most astounding things, which is a testament to the fact that you were talking about, which is they know their problems and can find the solutions, but they are astounding in the ability to adapt to their circumstances. So we hear from our partners, and we have spent some years trying to say, okay, what kind of digital tools will make sense? How can we build out our capacity building frontline workers in the SHG groups? And we realized that actually they adapted to it faster than anyone else. We've done training with more than 1 lakh of SHG members in, in weeks' times, using WhatsApp, using whatever digital tools they had, and got them to use all of the messages much more effectively. They adapted them, they built rangolis, they did wall paintings in the most creative way, but in the context in which they were living. So their ability to adapt, their ability to create and innovate is unsurpassed currently. And we can see that across states, the women-led self-help groups have emerged as the most effective frontline responders, reaching the last mile, ensuring relief, socio-economic protection to the country's most vulnerable households. And we can see that in very clear examples. They are donating money to the PM Cares Fund. And on the other hand, they've been collecting rice, wheat, and providing support to the most vulnerable, the most poor, single women-headed households in the villages. This mass effort is really a tribute to the strength and potential, both of the NRLM and of course the various SRLMs across the country. So it has grown into one of the world's largest institutional platforms for the poor. And we are so privileged and honored to be part of it and part of the country in which these exist. Undoubtedly, as you know, Nita Kejrewal recently articulated in an op-ed, SHGs have demonstrated their worth and need well beyond anyone's expectations. And so therefore the need for us to advocate for their importance, I think, is no longer required. They're an essential fabric on which all of India can grow, and this is across rural and urban. We need to now think about really the role that these community institutions can play in now furthering the rural development goals, but which are now in very, very challenging times. We know mass migration reverse migration is taking place. This will put huge pressures on the rural economies. As we already know, those challenges are well documented by now. There are households that came out yesterday in a survey which will not have food security for more than a few weeks, and that's a large percentage of rural households. So we do know that SFGs have shown their capability and resilience, their drive and their vast reach, but we have to also think how we can further strengthen these institutions. So they do have the ability to deal with the next level of challenges while dealing with their own household challenges. And this panel, therefore, I hope will be able to reflect on 3 important issues. One is the different ways that the community institutions have shown up in different states in response to the crisis and in response to a continuing crisis that they feel. Second, we need to deliberate on how we need to strengthen their ability to continue to play that role, and what role can they play more largely in rebuilding the livelihoods of the poor and improving governance across sectors, whether it be, there'll be pressures on the education system as migrants go back, there'll be pressures also on health systems, which we are already coping with. How can they now be strengthened further to help expand the work that they're already doing? And third, we have to discuss some of the gaps that they're currently facing. What can we do from an institutional perspective, the long-term dislocation on livelihoods, health and nutrition and social security? How can we help address those gaps? So I think I want to spend more time to listen to all of our very esteemed panelists. Most of them come with a large amount of experience of working with these institutions, both on the field and at a policy level. So I hope we'll have a very rich discussion. I would encourage everyone who's in the audience to please post your questions, and our colleagues from the Nudge Foundation will make sure that we address them either directly here through our panelists, but also in later forums through emails, etc. So with that, I'd like to invite Shri Vijay Kumar first to just kick us off with just some quick reflections on what the big challenges he sees and what we as institutions and support organizations can do in the immediate term, in the immediate and medium term. Thank you.
Okay. I think what we are facing is perhaps one of the biggest crisis in at least our generation. And but I also want to warn everyone that the way we have destroyed Mother Nature, we are going to face even bigger crises. So it is a wake-up call, and there are definitely things in the short term which are very critical for the SHG networks, and I can see Kudumbashree has should be a role model in the way these things have been addressed, and also many of the SRLMs have already done that. Is how do these measures like social distancing, the precautions that need to be taken at home, at work, the SHG as the medium of collective action, knowledge dissemination is perhaps the best institution in our country to take this message to the last person. So that I see as something very doable and of utmost urgency for all the state rural livelihoods missions. Going forward, I would like to see health and nutrition on the agenda of the self-help groups. So this is already happening in many states as pilots, but I would be very happy if this is universalized, just as DDs are talking about savings, livelihoods. So health and nutrition, sanitation, this should be on their agenda so that they take these messages to their families and to everyone in the village. Third, I would also like to see household kitchen gardens becoming a universal intervention. I believe very strongly that it can improve nutrition, provide a balanced diet. So this is in the immediate measures that I can think of, and also what I'm sure all of us are realizing that this crisis has really told us that we need to reorder priorities in our life. So what are the most important priorities of you know, uh, and what are those which are superficial? So those things are becoming clear, and I'm sure our women can make better sense out of it. Then other thing which I really we have been working on this is we see the return of migrants in many states, and so promotion of the livelihoods of migrants also should be one of the priorities under the for the DDs. And one suggestion I have also made to the National Rural Livelihoods Mission and also to some of the SRLMs that talk to me, that I feel that many of the SHGs have depleted their savings, their corpuses in taking care of the food security, health security during these emergencies. So one of the measures of the government would be to recapitalize the self-help groups so that they can kickstart their livelihoods. And finally, as I mentioned, if they don't eat proper food, the food that we are growing through the chemical agriculture means is deficient in nutrition, is also full of poisons. So in the medium term, I would like to see the self-help groups being involved in changing the way in which we produce food. And we have examples of the women self-help groups in Andhra Pradesh. About 140,000 of these SHGs are involved in moving to regenerative agriculture, which makes it more profitable for them. And also, they're producing food which is safe, nutritious, and they're not exposed to harmful chemicals when they are being farm workers. So, but then there is something else which not doesn't seem like a emergency, but it's more internal to the SRLMs, and that is somewhere I feel we should again we should refocus, prioritize on the strength of our institutions, whether the self-help groups, the federations, the focus should be on the quality of the institutions, their norms, their values. So that focus I feel we should not lose. And also I feel that somewhere the SRLMs may be encroaching into the roles of the women federations. So somewhere we need to draw a very delicate balance between the institutions of the poor, the self-help groups, the village organizations, their federations. Their autonomy must be respected. Their capacities must be built without encroaching into their space. So I'll conclude here. I would like to listen to the other panels.
Thank you very much, sir. Those are very enlightening. Can we now ask Ma'am Nita Kejrewal to speak? She needs no RLM from the beginning. She has full, institutional visibility, a great institutional memory of the whole journey of NRLM, and so around where you see the SRLM movement going.
Sorry, Madhu, have I lost you or are you speaking? Madhu, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay, so thank you, Madhu, and always a privilege to share a platform with Mr. T. Vijay Kumar, who has initially conceived NRLM and has been our mentor. So if we look at the self-help group movement right now, just to give a small background also, now we have this huge number of self-help groups all over the country. We have reached out to about 6.78 crore women, and they have been organized into more than 61 lakh self-help groups all across the country. So effectively, we are actually impacting, if you see a family size of say 5 persons, we are impacting more than 32 crore people in the country. And then we have these federations, the village organizations, more than 360,000, the cluster level federations, more than 31,000. So this huge social capital being built along with approximately almost 3 lakh community resource persons that we have. So this is the platform, as Mr. Vijay Kumar, of course, has already said very in his previous remarks and in the opening remarks in this panel also. This is a huge platform. We have built a very strong platform with the quality of the institutions being very well built. And on top of that, we have been able to provide a lot of financial support also to these institutions. So if you look at the kind of credit that has been given, almost 3 lakh crores of credit has gone to these institutions. And this, coupled with the kind of capitalization support that has gone, so more than 11,000 crores of capitalization support has gone. But the remarkable thing is that the small capitalization support in terms of 11,000 crores has been actually able to leverage a much larger credit from the financial sector, and in addition their own savings, which itself is somewhere towards 20,000 crores. So this kind of system is already in place, and building on the social infrastructure that we have been able to create, we have been able to have a lot of inclusive mobilization. So a lot of focus has been on the coverage of the vulnerable, and all the states have right from the beginning had this strategy of focusing on inclusion and diversifying income. So there are so many schemes, as you know, under NRLM, like the MKSP, the SVEP, plus the way we are working for managing the livelihoods of the, or supporting the livelihoods of the individual households, diversifying their sources of income, etc. So we are working with almost 86 lakh Mahila Kisans, including those under the MKSP projects, and through SBP, we have created almost 100,000 enterprises. In terms of skill development, we have under DDU, GKY and our cities, we have been able to train more than 10 lakh people, and placements also given to more than 6,40,000 people. And as pointed out by Vijay sir also, that we need to be working a lot on issues related to social development like FNHW, etc. There also we have been able to start working quite a lot. So this is a new area of work in which we have entered, and we need to really go ahead a lot in this area. And particularly, you know, the kind of situation we are in, it makes it even more important that we focus more on all these social development related issues. So if you look at the strength of our social capital, one of the measures by which you can really see how they are able to take the opportunities offered to them. So this kind of strength or empowerment has come amongst the women. And if you look at the response that they have given to the COVID situation, the way they have been able to take the opportunity, both for their own economic benefit, but also to be able to support the society. So in the large number of masks that they have been producing, now, there was no instruction. I don't think there was any instruction from the SRLMs, definitely not from NRLM, but they saw an opportunity and they have taken it. So masks being produced, hand washes being produced, sanitizers being produced, community kitchens being run. But even more than that, they have, as Vijay sir also pointed out, they have all across the country, we have been getting all these reports saying that they've been collecting these free rations and giving to the vulnerable. The cooked food also they have been providing. They've been contributing to PM Care, to the CM Care Fund also. So this has been really amazing. And not only that, right from the beginning, the awareness generation that has been brought through these institutions on COVID related issues, that has also been quite amazing. So in fact, I read one report saying that in some state, when the CM was interacting with MG Narega workers, he was told that because of the SAG women, they have got to know a lot about the COVID situation and what kind of protective steps to be taken. And they have, whatever activity they have been doing, they have themselves been practicing all the social distancing, etc. So there's been a real tremendous response, and it was very spontaneous in a way. So we can see that there is a lot of strength here. Moving forward, you know, we actually have been thinking of two kinds of responses. One is that we have to have an immediate kind of response as Mr. Vijay Kumar again said, and he had sent us this recommendation suggestion also. And this is something that we have also been thinking, is that there is a need immediately to have sufficient liquidity at the community level. And one way in which it can happen is that loans, credit should be available easily to the self-help groups and their members, either through their own institutions or through the banking services. And as rightly pointed out, there has been a depletion of financial resources because a lot of loans would be taken, repayment would be difficult. We have also suggested that there should be a moratorium period on loan repayment. So definitely the financial situation, the health of the institutions is going to take a hit. So we definitely need to replenish this. So going ahead, we are actually thinking of talking to the states and making an assessment of what is the situation and how we can actually support the institutions in being able to have sufficient liquidity available, because we need to boost not only investments in livelihood activities in order to revive the rural economy, but also we need to boost the consumption expenditure. So that is an immediate concern. And this other concern is the issue of the migrants, the migrant laborers that have returned. There are many ways in which we would like to address this situation. One is, of course, trying to identify if they are left out of the PDS system, then trying to get them there, if we can include them in our SAG network. But we need to have some special kind of maybe schemes or projects also immediately to be able to include them in our systems and help them, in taking up different kinds of livelihood activities. So we have been thinking about it, and we are going to come to the states with more suggestions, and of course seeking suggestions from the states also. But in the longer term, of course, we are thinking that there are 2-3 things on which we really need to work. One is, of course, again, strengthening the institution. So in these areas, we are getting a lot of support out from the NRETP project supported by the World Bank. We are getting a lot of support from BMGF also at the national level and in a few states. So what we are going to focus on now is livelihoods. And in terms of livelihoods, it is the cluster development, the value chain development, strengthening the producer groups, and also to be able to provide credit to these producer groups through the SG ecosystem. So that will be one area in which we will certainly be trying to work very strongly. And the second, of course, is, as I mentioned earlier, also the social development related issues. So here we have actually started work. Most of the states have initiated work in some way or the other, but there is a way to go. And definitely now the thinking here in the ministry also is that this is a very, very important area of work now, particularly because of the situation that we are facing now. So we need to put in a lot more focus, a lot more energies and a lot more resources in this area of work also. So here we are grateful for the support we are getting also from BMGF. And the bank has also been very considerate, and we've been told that if we need to make some changes in the NRETP project and put in resources for addressing the COVID situation, we can be doing that. So these are basically our kind of activities that we are thinking of doing. Thank you, Madhu, at this point, and I'll be happy to take any questions later on.
Sure. Thanks, ma'am, so much. I think if we have a couple of questions, John, directly for ma'am or for Vijay sir, can I please see them on my screen so that I can ask them? Are there any direct questions for NRLM or the government institutions, or any of the remarks made by Shri Vijay Kumar?
No direct questions yet, but broad questions have started coming in across channels.
Okay.
So, I sent you one on your screen.
Okay. So one of the questions, ma'am, is that while we've scaled the SHGs and community institutions, how will we reach out to geographically dispersed areas and include women who are currently not part of the SHGs? And what is the role for non-profits in that?
So as you know, under NRLM, we have been working in a phase-wise manner, and we have a saturation approach. So we have almost entered most of the blocks in the country. Some 700 odd blocks are left to be covered. So in the next couple of years, we'll definitely be entering all the blocks, but it will take a little more time to be able to cover all the areas, all the villages in the country. But since we are going with a saturation approach, we will be reaching out to each and every household. In terms of the role of NGOs, CSOs, etc., we have been partnering with a lot of CSOs, and all the states have been partnering with a lot of CSOs. And you're aware, even with BMGF, we are partnering with some of the organizations. So particularly in terms of support for different kinds of livelihood activities, because there, as you know, livelihood activities are so varied in nature, and different kinds of support is required, different kind of skills is required. So while mostly the institution building is being done mostly through the SRLMs themselves, but for other areas of work, there have been a lot of partnerships, and I'm sure, this whole work is so huge. So much more to be done, that there is definitely a lot of space for different kinds of organizations with different kinds of capacities and skills.
Yes, and I'm sure, ma'am, the way that they have stood up for the COVID response, as you've said, will, I think, encourage more institutions, both private and non-private, non-profits, to actually engage more heavily than they may have done in the past. I think the SHGs have spoken themselves without much support from anyone, and said, here we are ready, come and work with us. So I think that's been one of the big positives that have come out of this really bad pandemic and crisis. So I want to now turn over to Gayatri. if everyone's okay. And then we'll have more time, if we can all keep to our times, then we'll have more time for some question and answer and a panel discussion. So Gayatri has been leading, is a lead economist with the Agriculture and Food Global Practice of the World Bank. She's worked in extensively in Africa, Latin America, East and South Asia, and has a deep interest in working on poverty, agriculture and rural development, livelihoods and access to resources. She currently is the task team leader for the Rural Livelihoods Program in India and South Asia, including the NRETP and the BTDB in Bihar. So obviously Gayatri has been at the center of all this from the World Bank. So would love to hear your perspectives, Gayatri, on some of the questions we've all been addressing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Madhu. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right, wonderful. So, needless to say, I am actually the newcomer in this group. You are all far more aware and experienced and involved with the history of NRLM. You've nurtured it and you've seen it grow in each state and at the national level. So I myself have gone through a tremendous amount of learning, let's say in the last couple of years, but certainly very rapid learning in the last few months, being absolutely amazed at as you say, the ability of these groups to stand up and be counted and really lead the charge in responding before anyone could say much to them or suggest to them what to do. They were on it before we were able to figure out what we personally had to do. I was struggling with virtual school and all of this sort of thing, and these women with much harder lives were well on their way. So it's been a real awakening, I think, for a lot of us in many ways to see this groundswell. So I really would like to just share a couple of perspectives. Like I said, this panel is really at the heart of figuring out the nuts and bolts of helping these institutions grow at the state level and at the national level. And we're very privileged from the bank to have been part of this process for a very long time as an institution. And we are very privileged to continue to be part of the growth of this institution as it broadens its scope, as Mr. Vijay, Kumar and Nita have explained. What I want to share is, however, that there is a transformation that we're seeing. We're seeing a tremendous change in the rural economy. It doesn't always come through because very often media is carrying news stories that portray a particular lens, use a certain lens, or concentrate on a particular subsector, and it's often very hard for us to see what's happening overall. But changes in India and the structural changes in India have always been difficult in the sense that the rural economy has not really changed, or it appears not to have changed as rapidly as it ought to be changing for us to be able to grow overall as a country. But I think that this crisis and some of the evidence that is coming out now is suggesting that there is a transformation happening. It's just not a very textbook transformation. It's just not, India sort of defies pretty much all logic in many ways. And here's another example. There is a very different type of transformation going on, and it is very much led by the women of rural India. We're seeing not just a change in terms of what they're involved in terms of the livelihoods they're choosing to engage in. They are moving up the value chain. They are working with markets with much more confidence, ability to negotiate. They're working on in enterprises to add value, to create new products, and trying to pretty much break out of a very sort of structured old way of organizing in a rural space. And they're really breaking out of that. But at the same time, they're carrying with them all the strengths that come out of the way in which rural India is set up, which is the strength of the communities, the strength of the ability to work across communities, to work with local government structures. All of those strengths appear to have been carried into this current situation that we're in. So I want so some of the sort of the continuing challenges that we'll have to deal with that are sort of exacerbated by the current situation, some of which Mr. Vijay Kumar also talked about, you know, the fact that climate change is not going away, resource degradation is not going away. We've still got a big problem over there. We've got to address those issues as well. We know that we have very high malnutrition still in many parts of the country. A lot of hidden hunger, which is going to be exacerbated possibly, despite all the efforts of the government to be able to provide basic amenities to households. Hunger may be exacerbated, malnutrition may be exacerbated because perishables have been affected a great deal by the impact on supply chains. So a loss of as many fruits and vegetables in your diet, for example, is something we should be watching out for. We also know that labor it's always been difficult in India in terms of the insufficient absorption of labor into what would be non-primary, non-casual sectors. And now we are seeing that seasonal migration is possibly going to change in nature. Many migrants may not choose to go back, or they may be too fearful of going back. How will we address those kinds of changes, which will have, as was pointed out earlier, an impact on agriculture? It might be the push we need. It might be the way in which we bring on more technology. We change the way in which we do our farming. It might create many opportunities. It might create the ability to strengthen local supply chains, to have changes in local marketing channels, so that there's a lot of innovation that is already coming out of this current period that we might be able to help scale up. So there is an opportunity as well coming out of this situation. Certainly the SAG women have shown that they can actually identify the opportunities, and they've moved ahead. And so we also need to be able to, I think at a macro level, identify those opportunities and both facilitate their ability to keep adapting and keep innovating, but also more broadly learn from this sector to try and identify what has to happen across the various other facets of the rural economy, the non-farm sector and the farm sector. So it is, in that sense, I think, addressing the, as Nita has pointed out, the social safety net areas that need to be strengthened will require, I think, a very proactive use of the SAG platform. While there are very good programs that the government already has, the PDS is one of the largest in the world, I believe. So we know that, yes, if we put more through that pipe, then more people will be reached, but only if there is also a community bottom-up approach to ensure that that eligible households are being identified. Those who should be on those registries are going to be put on those registries. Those who no longer need to be there would move out of those registries. So there's it's greater efficiency that is built into the safety nets that we have. And in it, we'll have to identify what the role of migrants will have to be, what the role of these community organizations will be to identify the needs of the migrants. The second area will be to expand economic activity, to keep building the strengths, not to assume that that everybody may have been impacted adversely, but to hope that enough of the momentum that was there prior to the COVID-19 lockdown effects, that momentum can be brought back, that we can continue to build on those strengths. So to quickly identify who needs to be supported through, say, working capital, access to working capital, increased access to loans, etc., to make sure that they don't fall back into vulnerable situations, but build on the strengths that we already had started to see coming out of this sector. So that's, I think, very important to be able to continue to build on what was already working. This third area is to ensure that we learn enough about the innovations that are coming out of the current period. Lots of new marketing innovations have come out of the SHG groups themselves. They're not just doing the community kitchens, they're also doing fresh vegetable delivery, for instance. They're doing this with a rapidity in the supply chain, which is quite amazing. The milk pouring has continued through the entire period. Yes, there have been impacts on earnings, but the processes appear to have been strengthened with lots of innovation coming in. So let's learn from them and let's try and scale those up into what would be the new normal. Access to finance, which has already been mentioned. In here, I want to really emphasize the fact that female banking agents are really doing an incredible job of reaching the last mile, and they create a sense of trust in the system, which I don't think should be underestimated. I know that nobody on this panel would underestimate it, but as a general policy, I think this is really quite important, that the MORD policy, which has been there to push the expansion of female banking agents, is really taken to heart now, and we find a way to do this with great rapidity, because there are only about 8% of all banking agents, which is a ridiculously small number, and yet they are extremely effective. So that's one policy that I think, certainly from my perspective, it would be something that we would like to support the scale up of. This is important. Why? Not just because of the trust issues that I mentioned and the ability to reach the last mile, but also because if we consider that if the government is able to transfer more resources through its various social assistance schemes down to vulnerable households, the more resources there are, the more important it becomes that households are able to access them quickly, in a timely manner, without any constraints, without any hassles of finding the bank or finding an ATM or not knowing what to do. So it's also very important to plan ahead, because there will be a time when those resources will grow as our economy grows, and vulnerable households will need to access them quickly and put those resources into productive use immediately, or consumptive needs. The next area I want to just highlight is the need for identifying the right type of infrastructure. It's still a constraint in many rural areas, and I think it's important that the NREGA work that the MORD is also doing is integrated a little bit more, finding ways to scale it up perhaps during this period, but also perhaps trying to improve the way in which we identify what type of infrastructure can be facilitated through NREGA, which also then supports the livelihood side of it. I know that this convergence has been a long-term agenda for MORD, and I think there's lots of learning coming out, which again, I think is something that we would like to support going forward, to keep building on that ability to bring these programs together. And then the final area that I want to emphasize is on education and the food and nutrition aspects. I did talk a little bit about nutrition earlier, so let me talk about education, but bring those 2 points together. Education in rural areas, we don't know how it's going to be impacted, but it may be that we see children dropping out. It may be that we see reduced enrollment. If that is the case, we need to find a way to react quickly to it and find some solutions. This is also obviously related to food, to school feeding programs and the ability to at least get that one meal. Things that were working earlier that we need to just keep an eye on and make sure that we can patch it up if needed, to address the issues if this becomes a prolonged crisis and there are impacts on education, which we all know is a fundamental part of changing our rural economies and our livelihoods and our abilities to grow as economic agents and social agents in rural India. Thanks very much for this time, and I appreciate being on this panel.
Thanks, Gayatri. Thanks a lot. So now I'll invite, because we've heard quite a lot of both the policy recommendations, but also the huge impact that COVID is leaving across sectors, not least health and nutrition, education, as well as their social and economic protection. And all of these are big, big issues, but I know that the SRLMs are trying to come and rise to the challenge, as well as seize the opportunities and the roads that the SHG women are showing themselves. So I'd like to invite first the mission director from UPSRLM. We are very privileged to have you here, sir. I know you're in the whirlwind of trying to do the response and be at the forefront of the UP response to COVID. But Mr. Sujeet Kumar has kindly consented to be here. He's a member of the IAS. He's played a variety of roles in the government of Uttar Pradesh over the last 10 years, with a deep experience of working in the districts of UP and therefore with the SHGs in their own milieu. In his present role, he oversees the work at the UPSRLM as well as officiating of the CEO of the Uttar Pradesh Rural Road Development Authority. His interest lies in assuring social protection schemes will reach the most vulnerable. So addressing some of the big challenges that we have before us, we'd love to hear your perspective, sir. So Mr. Sujeet Kumar, please. John, do we have him? Hello, sir. Are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we can.
Okay. So, in UP, the model of CLF-led neighborhood response system, which we have been using for the COVID-19. So, I would like to give a short presentation on this. First of all, I would like to brief why we are using CLF for the neighborhood response system. When you will look at the ground structure of the UP, the village structure, you find that is mainly controlled by the pradhans and the panchayats. So, as an alternate system, the CLF, which mainly consists of women SHGs, we have tried to use them to counter this the COVID issue which has arisen recently. So, in this model, the our first motive was to break the human chain of transmission, and for that, a new set of community practices, which has to be evolved among the persons that needed to be reached to the ground level, like the hand washing, use of masks. These things need to be told to the people at the grassroots level, and it needs to be ensured that they actually practice it. And similarly, the preparedness at the village level or the neighborhood level, like if someone is actually found corona infected, then what should be done, whom to inform, whom to contact, the role of ASHA workers, then the Anganwadi workers. These things need to be disseminated between the villages. And our major focus has been the first, that is the prevention. As of now, the major focus is on the prevention, like teaching people what practices to be followed, what major changes they can make in their lifestyle. And then the second, our focus was the identification. Identification for that, mainly those the migrant laborers coming from the outside, they need to be inspected and quarantined, and then sent to the villages. And if any suspected cases are coming, then whom to contact. This was our second major focus. And then the isolation, if a person is found infected, then he and other family members, if they are to be quarantined, then whether the quarantine center has been made in the village itself or at the block level, respectively, the people need to be told about that. So, according to this, our major focus intervention were the CLF in UP. Till now, we have around 790 CLFs. So, the women who were active in this CLF, they were taken and they were guided how to take the leadership in these things. The whole planning was told to them, and their exact role was defined. So our major focus was first a village readiness plan to be made, that these means the CLF which we are engaging, first of all, they need to be told what exactly is to be done. And so the scientific information on how the virus actually spread, they need to be taught, and then only they can actually tell it, give the information to the village people. And similarly, what behaviors need to be adopted within the villages, within the habitations, how to prevent the interaction among different habitations, like if an habitation has been infected, the quarantine zone may not be as effective by the district administration or the police force in the rural area as the action has been taken in the urban areas. So in the village level, these CLF members and the villagers itself will have to take action, and the different types of habitations need to be separated. Similarly, many myths and other type of social norms which have are to be evolved, and many myths have been evolving over the time via social media. So they need to be busted out, and it should be told that what is the correct information and what all are the wrong information. And similarly, local disease surveillance, the first response to the health system, which are usually at the village level, our ASHA workers or ANMs, they need to be taught of how to identify the suspected cases, and if at all any suspected cases are coming, what next step to be taken. The CLF will definitely play an important role in this also. And the second area of focus is the support for the vulnerable families. In the SRLM structure, we have a VRF fund specially dedicated to this, in which any vulnerable families can take a loan from the VRF fund, or if family is very vulnerable, then they can also give 3,000 rupees as a grant to them. And similarly, the migrant laborers, especially the migrant laborers who are coming from outside, in UP we have a very huge number of this. Till now, around 20 lakhs have already come to the UP, and this figure is expected to go to around 40-45 lakhs. So most of the migrant laborers who will be coming will come under the vulnerable families. How to deal with them, that is a major issue. And then access to government announcements. Government in the last 1.5 months have been regularly announcing new programs. Then our old existing programs, like the pension scheme, they have been strengthened, and 2 months pension has been given to their account. So giving this information to the people, and more importantly, how to deal with it. If a news comes in the media that 1,000 rupees have been given in the labor's account, the next day most of the laborers will go and accumulate at the banks. So to avoid these things, CLF members will have to actually playing an active role in this. And our BC Saki, banking correspondent Sakis, they have been deployed so that we can bring these things in the digital platform, and the people can be told that they can go in groups one by one, rather than accumulating at one point of time. And similarly, other government schemes like ration scheme and those things are required to be told to the people, so that actual government information and correct government information reach to the people. Yeah. Then our major components for this would be aware. The first component is awareness and counseling. To create awareness among the people, we have been forming many WhatsApp groups, and our SHG members have been playing active role in this. And similarly, many audio visuals have been circulated by the Honorable Minister, then Pramukh, our Principal Secretary. They have been, we have been recording their audio messages and being circulated in the radios via WhatsApp group, Facebook, Twitter, that the people actually are able to know these things. And then many posters have been displayed, wall writings have been made. So the actual information about the COVID and to remove the misinformation, these things are necessary. Similarly, support to access entitlements. For this, we have, first of all, we will have to prepare a list of all the government schemes which is going on, mainly like the ration cards.
Sorry to interrupt, but we have two other speakers, and unfortunately, we have a very hard stop. So can we wrap up in the next 1 minute so we give the time to the other two as well, please? Sorry, I'm interrupting.
I will just take 5 more minutes.
So 1 more minute, please, because we have two other speakers. So we're running short of time, and there's a hard stop at 7.
Okay. So, like in the access for entitlements, the most of the benefits which are being given by the government, those have been made. And then the support to vulnerable families, I have also earlier told, the migrant is, that is the one class of our vulnerable families, similarly handicapped people, elderly people, and pregnant women. And a strategy need to be involved how to deal with them. Then the personal and community safety, the prevention and containment steps that has been taken, and then implementation and post.
So we've lost you a little bit. Yes, little bit. We lost your last remarks.
Like this, that has been mandatory. So face mask, this has also been made mandatory in the UP. Then hand washing with soap, and soap should be made available at all the water points. Similarly, the frontline health workers, which are basically our ASHAs, ANMs, and Anganwadis and Anganwadi Sahikas, they have been identified and support is provided to them by the CLF staff. And then the migrant support, the migrant level which are coming to UP from different parts of the country, we have been in the last few weeks accumulating their data, and we are doing the skill survey mapping of all those migrant labor. And then we will be attaching this migrant level either with our already existing SHGs or creating new SHGs for them, so that they can be readily accommodated in the villages and they can do some fruitful activities under NRLM or SRLM.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. These were very enlightening. I'm sorry, we'll take some questions at the end because we're a little short on time. So I'm going to quickly jump to Shri Bishnu C. Parida. He's the Chief Operating Officer from the Jharkhand State Livelihood Promotion Society. He's the CEO of the SRLM there, and he's been leading work in the Jharkhand SRLM almost from its very inception, and continues to drive the agenda on women's collectives and empowerment with zeal. He brings a deep knowledge to the sector, having been a key player as an implementer, also with his experience at Pradhan. Shri Parida, could I request you please to keep to 10 minutes, please, with key points, and please be sharing. We'll share all of the PowerPoints that you've made with the participants. If you could just cull out some of the key points. Thank you. And I'm sorry, but we kind of ran out of time, so I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Parida.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all the participant, and special to our T. Vijay Kumar sir, who is our mentor, guru for this NRLM program in all over the India. So I am privileged to share few points. Actually, I had made a PPT which could telling about the history of the SHG movement and some theoretical part on the community institution, why it is important for the rural development. Because for rural development kind of things, there are many stakeholders. First stakeholder is the rural community itself, the beneficiaries. The second big stakeholder is the government, because government has the mandate, fund, money, and mechanism to deliver its constitutionally provisioned development to the poor people. The third category of stakeholder are the PRI members, Panchayat Raj members, which have the also have the constitutional mandate to serve the people. Then there are many stakeholders like NGOs, research institutes, but the one of the stakeholder, what I told in the beginning, that is called community people, the beneficiary itself, they should play a crucial role to sustain the things. Because what observed in the long run, NGOs and government departments have done many things, many innovative things, but that things could not sustain because of various reasons. And the many things community people are doing, that is being sustained and being scaled up. So here the role of community institutions it became very crucial. I'm remembering one sentence that any community institution can sustain as long as there is a issue or there is an activity. Issue means it may be issue of a liquor ban, it may be issue of forest protection, maybe issue of land right, issue of not getting the entitlement from the government, apathy of the government official. As long as there are issues, the people get united. Then, but that is once the issue resolved, the organization, the we feeling and the community work, that they vanish gradually. So there is need to be issue plus activity. Activity like in SHG they are sustaining because there is a regular weekly saving and credit activity. There is loan uptaking, livelihood promotion in various forms like agriculture, livestock, minor forest produce. So there are continuous market linkages. So there is issue plus, and there are many issues SSG and their federation like village organization, cluster federation, they do for the community, for their own self. They are actually the service giver or the service receiver. The both role they pay. So, but as I am not able to show my PPT, let me what I today I could take a snapshot of the various rural development schemes presently being run by the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, and there are many rural development schemes that was there but not now. I can list. I have taken a snapshot of those schemes and with their present beneficiary, but I'm not going to tell their beneficiary. But there are 9 schemes. I can just list out the schemes without telling the beneficiary. Already NRLM beneficiaries, the screen is telling 6 crores 84 lakh 45,155, and there are MGNREGA, Pradhan Mantri Awas Jojana Gramin, NRLM, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Sadak Yojana, National Social Assistance Program, SAGI Sansad Adas Gram Yojana. Then there are DDGKY, Deen Dayal Gramin Kausal Vikas Yojana, then Mission Antyodaya and Urban. And these are the present 9 schemes are running for the rural people. But there are many schemes which were started in 1953 and still not there. But some of them I can list out. That is IRDP, EGP, NREP, JRY, Citra, Ganga Kalyan Yojana, Million Rural Scheme, Dokra, Trisem, Indira Awas Yojana, and SAGI. But you can read the many paper. Some of these schemes could perform better, but most of the scheme could not deliver the things which is they're designed for. Although the policies were there, but the strategy, the approach in the ground could not be done. But NRLM, in my view, I am working in NRLM from 2013. It going to be 7 years. So I think something is happening in the ground, and people are getting organized. People are delivering the things. They are making progress by themselves. We are not doing much things. We are just giving the direction. We are just providing the systems. We are just providing the guidance, training, capacity building. But the women SHG member, they are leading. So there is a success in this program. As T. Vijay Kumar sir told, that this SHG movement started in Karnataka in 1985 by Parida, and with a support of IFAD program. And it is a pioneering thing, and it came from the Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, Grameen Bank, the promoted by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus in 1975, the first SHG they formed in the Bangladesh. But our India formed the first SHG in Karnataka in 1985. And but first linkage also Parida done with support of NABARD in 1992. So there are many good NGOs which are still performing better in SHG formation, community organization. That is one of is Pradhan, the Professional Assistant for Development Action, where I had worked for 13 years, 10 years in Odisha and 3 years in Jharkhand. Pradhan promoted its first SHG in 1987 in Alwar district of Rajasthan. So there is no time, so I'm not going detail how the method. Then in this next year, 1988, Chaitanya formed the first SHG in Maharashtra. Similar type, now the government came forward. In the one government Women Development Corporation in Tamil Nadu, they formed their SHG in 1988. Then the biggest.
Sir, I'm sorry. Can we come to a conclusion? Sorry, you have a couple of minutes. I have to go to the next speaker, please.
Half a minute. Just half a minute for this thing. Then the biggest break come from the government. What Vijay Kumar sir told, the SORP of Andhra Pradesh started the SHG formation in 1995 with support from UNDP. Then Kudumbashree started in 1999. Then Bihar started 2006. Then finally NRLM launched at national level by Shri Vijay Kumar sir in 2011. And we in Jharkhand, we started NRLM 2012. Now I am skipping all things. I'm giving my recommendation and some suggestion for this. Already done same things replied by our Nita madam and T. Vijay Kumar sir. So I'm just adding a few things. My suggestion that APJ Abul Kalam, he had proposed a thing long back that is called Pura, providing urban amenities in rural area. That is also being in a different form, being formed a scheme at MORD that is called Urban Mission. Sama Prasad Mukherjee Urban Mission, but that is not that vision of Pura. So in my view, Government of India and other funding agencies should think that how the health services, how the education services provided in the rural area, so that there will be less migration to city. Some health services and education services quality, these two services with some micro enterprises, also some skill-based setup can be set up in the satellite cities. It may not be in the very interior part of the rural, but many satellite cities need to be set up, and people can, there are communication system, transport systems, which is such that people can come and go back after working in the satellite city, so that the metro like Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, they will get less burden. There will be less slum on the city. That is my one suggestion. Second suggestion, Nita madam already told that SHG need more investment in terms of capacity building, in terms of recapitalization. We, Government of India, already declare many 20,000 lakh crores rupees. So major part should come to rural area to SHG. And what Vijay Kumar told, I agree with that. The major challenge is coming in the climate change. Natural resource being repleted. So we need to work on that. I stop here because I have lots of points, but I cannot proceed further. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for
Thank you so
giving time.
much. Sorry, and I'm sorry. I know each participant has a lot of rich to share, but I don't want to miss out on on our other participants. So thank you so much. We'll come to last but not least. Actually, one of the star SRLMs is the Kudumbashree, and I know that many of our audience would like to hear from you, sir. Shri Sukumaran heads the NRO cell at Kudumbashree and leads the work on technical assistance that is offered to support and learn from the work. Actually, the stellar work that Kudumbashree has done, as in all things, again, in the COVID response, Kudumbashree has actually played an enormously impactful role. So without further ado, I'd like to ask you to, sir, please speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just, I think I should go quickly to the point. When actually, as all of you know, we were the first state to be, to have the a COVID patient in early January. And the initial days when it started spreading in March, the Kudumbashree response actually was a kind of, shock initially. The first time, am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are.
For the first time, Kudumbashree women were not being encouraged to meet. They were actually being told not to meet. Considered not seen. Then I think that barrier was crossed quite effectively, where the Kudumbashree group started meeting, keeping the physical distancing and taking care about washing hands, etc. And then the groups and the federations got on to action very quickly. And I'm not going into the details of what we have done, but broadly, Kudumbashree has played its role in supporting the government and the local governments, the panchayats, in mainly in setting up community kitchens, then producing sanitizers and masks, etc. All those kind of stuff which all other SRLMs are doing, we Kudumbashree also did. But one point I would like to highlight here is that Kudumbashree has had an advantage of being very close to the panchayats, and panchayats led the show in Kerala. The decisions were taken at the local level, the issues are managed at the local level by the panchayats, and Kudumbashree has been playing in more of a complementary role. And there, I think one advantage which we had, we still have, is the neighborhood approach. I would like to cite one example where we were initially wondering, shall we have a survey on the vulnerable sections, because there was news that the sections with multiple morbidity and also people who are 65 plus were more vulnerable. But then we realized that we don't need a survey when you have such a brilliant network. People know who are the most vulnerable. Every neighborhood group knows. We call neighborhood group. Our SSGs are called neighborhood groups. They work in a neighborhood.
Yes.
Our groups worked around those neighborhoods. People already know which are the vulnerable families, who are the vulnerable people, who are the ones with multiple morbidity. So it was easy to get this information through, and also in getting on to action. Thus, now we are not in a very firm ground today with 26 cases reported as people from other states and other countries are flowing into Kerala. But I think Kerala used this lockdown period for preparations, and touch wood, but I can say that the state is probably prepared to meet a spread. On that front, I would say Kudumbashree really is playing a complementary role along with the state government and the panchayats. The state government has been recognizing Kudumbashree's role and also encouraging it to work with the panchayats. Now, looking at the current situation and also looking at the future with a lot of uncertainties, I would like to point out a few things where we need to be taking a lot of, giving a lot of attention. One is, we just are in the process of administering this 2,000 crore rupee loan through the Kudumbashree network, but that's just not enough. We need a lot more funds, as others also pointed out here. Substantial funds have to come and should be administered through the network. Nita ma'am rightly said bank loans, but at the same time, it's very important that it is administered through the network. And of course, we don't go for loan waivers, etc. But if there can be some reduction in the interest rates, that would be useful. And of course, for livelihoods and the enterprises, and also on the farm front for the JLGs, along with working capital support, again administered through the network, they would need handholding, for which, as all of you know, we can use the cadre, the NRLM cadre, the SRLM cadre on different fronts who are already trained, and especially the enterprise cadre, the CRP EPs or the MECs, can be retrained to do handholding in resuming the operations of these enterprises. And also not only enterprises, but the natural resource dependent livelihoods such as fishery, even farming. And we can also train people to work with these JLGs so that they get some support, and in linking up with MGNREGS to bring in some cash into the system and utilize NREGS, as earlier pointed out, in creating some immediate, for example, farm land preparation is allowed in NREGS that can be used. And so what I'm trying to say is this working capital support along with handholding support for a longer period would be necessary. And we should leverage on the strength and outreach of our network to get to the vulnerable groups, the more vulnerable sections, who are obviously the people with uncertain incomes and unsecured tenures, and identify their specific issues, the specific challenges that we are faced with, and use the group to support them. And in the case of traditional livelihoods, there are very specific issues. I have several examples to cite about the non-timber forest produce of the tribal groups or the Kerala's marine fishing communities, but I'm not elaborating that. But I would only say that the traditional livelihoods would require addressing specific challenges in specific contexts, which would be possible if we leverage on our community network. And of course, educational programs, including kind of living with the virus for a longer period than we originally anticipated. And to summarize, I would say a loan support, a much bigger loan through the network, and working capital support for different types of enterprises, and hand-holding support for a longer period, and also addressing special problems of the vulnerable sections through the network, and the special challenges that the traditional livelihoods are faced with. Identifying them, they are already being reported in the groups, and also we need to probably really train the cadre again, including the enterprise cadre, retrain them to take up these challenges, and that be very necessary to take up the program further. I think I closed there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Very interesting suggestions have come. I'm very pleased also to say that Nita ma'am has proposed a very good idea. I think we've heard from you, but I would propose to the organizers that we can do a similar discussion where we are actually listening to community level federations and SFG groups themselves and hearing from them. What do they see as their immediate challenges? What do they see as their longer term challenges? And what they have learned from how they have been able to step up and respond, and how would they like the support? What are the areas that they feel need to be supported? So I think that is a very excellent idea. There is such a rich discussion today. I'm really apologize for the shortage of time, but I think there was a lot of food for thought across all of the SRLMs. Basically, all of us are saying the same thing, that the community networks have become and will continue to be the bulwark on which a lot of the rural development agenda, including all-round development, whether it's health and nutrition, we know they have shown up brilliantly in being able to communicate and work with their communities. We are even looking at them for helping in doing the quarantining, isolation. And again, as everyone said, this is a long race. It's a marathon. We just started. We don't think this is going to go away very soon, so they will continue to need that. But none of the other development agendas are solved. So it is an exceedingly important layer that has been put on their shoulders. And we all together as a community need to figure out whether we are development partners, the government itself, and as well as all of the private sector institutions also have to come up and see the big opportunity that they have to support in real terms actually the growth of India. And if you're really looking at the more local responses as well as creating of a strong dynamic local market, then these are the institutions that we need to focus attention on. A lot of people in the questions had asked, how can we engage? I think for the young, there can be a process in which you find yourselves volunteering, working with the different SRLMs to strengthen these institutions. And if you have private sector expertise, to work and come in and bring your corporates into the fold, we're working with the SRLMs and helping them figure out how best they can address the needs of both their increasing their non-farm livelihood opportunities, addressing their farm livelihood opportunities through greater access, better access to markets, and helping to also learn from them how they cope in these very challenging times. So I think there should be a very strong two-way conversation. I'm sorry that we don't have time to go through the questions and have the panelists ask, but that's only because there was so much rich content that it would have been a shame for us to stop that. I think Nudge will definitely collate all of these questions and then send them back to the specific panelists if they're addressed to specific panelists, but ask most of our panelists to take some time to answer those questions. It only shows to us also that there is very much a great appetite to continue these kind of discussions. We'll definitely try and get the voices from the ground, hear from the women who are facing this on the front line, and we will come back with, hopefully you can attend that as well, and we will be in the position of listeners, and we should listen very carefully, because as we said at the beginning, they have most of the to deal with that.
Hello. Madhu, I think we'll get you there.
Panelists
I think we've momentarily lost Madhu there. We'll wait for her to come back. We are nearing the end of the session, but thank you so much for joining the session. It was a lively discussion. We'll have summaries of these discussions out very quickly. The session is also being watched live on YouTube, Book My Show, and Quinn channels. And so we've been curating questions from there. Although we didn't have time, we'll be able to share those questions with you later on. I think this is one of those sessions that we got a lot of requests for, and very valid points on hosting this session in Hindi and also bringing in women from the collectives to do their own session. We are trying to do one of those on the 16th of May with the Pradhan, Srijan, FES, and AGRSP joining us along with Vijay Mahajan. And we also have voices from the field there with migrant workers and tribals, and a lot of representation from the field. Hopefully that will be useful, and we'll try and do more of this, Nita ma'am. I think that's a very, very important suggestion. Any closing comments from Vijay Kumar sir on this would be really helpful. We just have about 2 minutes. It was a lively discussion, but the next session with Kailash Shatarthi sir will be starting in a while. But any closing comments from anyone, especially you, sir, will be really helpful. Sir, you're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think it was a very good dialogue, and I'm very happy the way the NRLM has grown, and I think the next phase of NRLM, as I see, is the SRLMs taking greater role, and then SRLMs enabling the federations to again have greater control over their activities and integration with the Gram Panchayats, which Kudumbashree has demonstrated. I think the next direction there is how SHGs become a integral part of the local self-government, thereby strengthening it and also holding it accountable. I conclude by saying that we are in the midst of a huge climate emergency. We have not even understood what it means. And as far as I know, because I've been working with about 150,000 SHGs in Andhra Pradesh, they are now the climate warriors. So my appeal to everyone is that this climate crisis cannot be tackled by the lockdown we have had for COVID. There is no lockdown. There is no, what shall we say, there is no such support system available. We have to start working on it from today onwards. And I see the women SHGs being very, very critical for all of us to survive. So that is what I would say is the real importance. And I feel that whatever time I have spent the last 20 years seems to be in preparation for this particular role. So if we have to show a good future for our children, our grandchildren, the time to act is now. The instruments are the women SHGs, and there is enough knowledge to show how we can actually address the climate change issues. So that is my earnest appeal to everyone. And I'm very happy to know that Kerala is going to shortly join the natural farming movement. And Nita, I'm so happy that we started the MKSP program. And I see the MKSP program as the nucleus for the next generation of livelihoods, because you can't even imagine the various dimensions of depredation that all of us will go through once the full force of climate emergency hits us. So there is a serious problem, but I'm happy that all of us collectively have built a structure which holds the key. The question is, are we ready to get it going? And I had a lot of discussions with various NGOs, Pradhan, Shri, AKRSP, many organizations in other parts of the country. They're all eagerly looking forward to guide their federations to be educated on how they can be a very critical element of the solution. So that's my request to everyone listening to us, and especially the SRLMs, that you hold the key. And as I just conclude by saying that it's not, women need development. The society needs the women's institutions to ensure its own survival. So that's what I want to conclude with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for those valuable words. Thank you to Vijay Kumar, sir, Nita Kejrewal, ma'am, Sajith Sukumaran, sir, Gayatri Acharya, Bishnu, Ji, and I would love to, and also Sujeet. I think he's probably still online. Sujeet, sir, also. Thank you everyone for joining, Madhu for moderating it brilliantly. I think we would love to continue to work with all of you. We've taken your suggestions on board. This is becoming a useful platform for everyone. And I hope we continue to partner and add value to the development sector in India. Thank you so much for your time. Coming on board on such short notice, very, very valuable to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize,
you.
my internet went very shaky during the storm, so I apologize. But thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Sajith, you can press the leave meeting button and it'll take you off the platform.